In the beginning of the past year, 2023, Nigerians went to the polls and elected different leaders, including a new president. The country had noticed yet another transfer of power from one democratic leader to another. And since then, the citizens of Africa's most populous nation and the richest country on the continent have been experiencing or, as some put it, experimenting a totally different style of leadership. Well, we are, of course, not here to scrutinize the Tinubu administration, at least not yet. Indeed, 2024, the year we just kicked off, has been predicted by different journalists, analysts, and pundits to be an interestingly attention-grabbing year to look at, of course, from different angles. First of all, the war in, or as some people put it, on Gaza, will continue to make a series of depressing and terrifying headlines. The war in Ukraine, or as the Russians call it, special operation, quote-unquote, will be making headlines too. Let's not forget the quote-unquote forgotten war in Sudan, which has too caused lots of devastation, forcing countless people out of their comfortable homes. In this special Global Arena Explainer, we're looking at some of the world's most attention-gripping elections to be conducted in this year, 2024. Well, I'm particularly personally interested in the Indian and the US elections for some genuinely obvious reasons, which will take place in April and November respectively.
The world anticipates or braces for an extremely consequential year of elections. Earth's largest democracy and one global flashpoint prepare to go to the polls. And arguably Europe's most important election of 2024 is one which isn't happening. I'm Andrew Mueller.
Oh, that was Australian Andrew Mueller, contributing editor to Monocle Radio in the UK and the presenter of the Foreign Desk and Foreign Desk Explainers, with his exhilarating and invigorating introduction. First of all, India is dubbed as the world's largest democracy. Not the best democracy though, sorry to my Indian friends, but it is the world's largest democracy simply because elections in India take over a month to finish, largely due to their population seemingly the world's most populous nation now, competing with China, though the Chinese challenge their regional geopolitical rival to the issue of productivity and development. Another important point is a political one. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, described often by his critics as quote-unquote a fascist, Hindu nationalist and a populist leader, is seeking for re-election, which if he succeeds, as it is his and the hope of his people, will continue to lead the home of Bollywood until 2029, surpassing his predecessor Manmohan Singh, and that would undoubtedly make him one of the longest-serving Indian prime ministers in India's history, spending somewhere in the region of, 15 years in power. And that is if he wins this year's election. Another important election to pay a close and microscopic attention to is the one coming up in November, in what the world believes to be the biggest and arguably most influential country on the planet. And it is without an iota of doubt that people will be keenly interested in the election for several reasons, but most importantly because of former President Donald John Trump. Right now, two states, Colorado and Maine, have both barred Mr. Trump from ballots there. In the highly contested 2020 election that brought Joe Biden into the Oval Office, serious issues played hugely significant roles in the election, like the economy, which was knocked, punched, and of course beaten by the pandemic, among others. But we are now in 2024, and fresh issues will, if not have already dominated the US political atmosphere, making it tensely complex and complicated. The Americans are currently not talking about COVID. It is now the US support to Israel and Ukraine permeating the American media landscape and of course public discourse. Something that is pretty much tied to the economy. But one undeniable, seemingly funny fact is the return or possible return of Mr. Trump, despite all the legal battles he has been trapped in since he left office. So the million-dollar question is, if he were to succeed at the court and happened to be the Republican office seeker for the West Wing? Could he make it back to the very Oval Office he sadly and unwillingly left in January 2021? Certainly, much remains to be seen. But what are the experts saying about some of these elections, especially the ones making headlines the most and the ones that are not? I've got in touch with an award-winning journalist.
Hi everyone, I'm Gina London. I used to be a White House correspondent with CNN in Washington, D.C. I now founded and run a company called Language of Leadership Limited, which seeks to help business professionals or anyone really become a more confident and comfortable communicator with strategies and structures and delivery techniques to help better connect. I am delighted to be joining my friend Umar Isa Dandago on Global Arena to help introduce some topics that hopefully you'll have more discussion about around the global elections of 2024.
Gina London also believes that 2024 is a significant year for democracy globally because of some of the things that we have mentioned earlier, and of course other incredible stuff she has for us.
Is this significant? And of course it is, because there are more than 50 countries representing over half the world's population who are running elections this year. Starting with this coming Saturday on January 13th, Taiwan is going to be electing its president and its members of parliament. What will that do with its relation and the pressure that it feels from China? That's very interesting. India, with an incredible amount of population, is also going to be holding elections, as is Russia, as is South Africa, as is the United States, where I'm from. Now, how significant are these? Well, in a global context, pretty much, because we're going to be looking at how the world is feeling about democracy, authoritarianism, far-right fringe, fascism, and how disenfranchised voters are. How easy is it for people to actually come to the ballot and feel that they're actually being heard?
Of course, elections are elections, but it is clear that some countries' elections make more headlines than other countries. So I asked Gina London about why many people don't pay much attention to the Russia's election that is coming up in March as compared to other influential countries. She has this to say.
When we talk about Russia, that's a foregone conclusion. We know the way the Constitution is structured that Putin will get in. So will that make a lot of headlines? Probably not so much because of the foregone conclusion I mentioned.
Come on, even some Americans think Donald J. Trump may come back despite the legal challenges he has been facing. This, as many believe, is a guy that is still massively popular among the Americans. There are, of course, other guys vying for the Republican presidential ticket, like the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, an Indian American, Nikki Haley, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, and many others. So let's get to hear what Gina London has to say about the US election. Is it really about Trump and Biden?
It's Trump versus Joe Biden. That's what's expected, and that's very likely what may happen. And the question I think I have for people is, will it make a difference to the United States? It certainly will if Donald Trump gets in. That's a real wild card. So how much will the headlines play? How much will people actually come out to the polls? How much are people just sick of politics and mudslinging and name calling? I think a lot. So I think hopefully someone can get out there and ignite people's interest again and not be seemed as, why does it matter? Why do we bother?
There will indeed be other consequential elections to be conducted in 2024 in other parts of the world: South Africa, Ghana, Rwanda, Mexico, Uruguay, Iran, Pakistan, Russia, and many more. And let me not forget Indonesia, the fourth most populous nation on earth, which is said to be, quote-unquote, the world's largest one-day democracy. That has indeed made 2024 a truly monumental year for elections, with over 60 countries representing nearly half the world's population gearing up for pivotal polls at various levels. This makes 2024 arguably the biggest election year in history, brimming with potential shifts in political landscapes and global power dynamics, further appointing it as a quote-unquote landmark year for democracy. We will, of course, here at Global Arena keep an eye on them and bring detailed description and comprehensive analysis on the elections and their significant relevance to us with our bodacious experts from different corners of the world. From Global Arena, I am Umar Isa Dandago. This explainer was written and presented by Umar Isa Dandago. The script editor is Zulfa Abdulaziz, a final year mass communication student at Bayero University, Kano. The sound engineer is Abdul Rashid Hussain, our South African friend. Many thanks indeed to Hawa Halliru Abubakar. On behalf of the producer and the team members, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Goodbye.